I don't want no oil, a spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here in studio with my healthier co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, today Rebecca and I will be bringing you an hour of radio called For a Green Future. And those of you who've been concerned about Rebecca's situation, she just had COVID. Rebecca assures me that she has tested negative and is feeling much, much better.
It was a home test, but I really am feeling better.
Yes, good. So we're very happy about that. And we're happy that you're listening to our show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we'll be talking about it in the ways that it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your families and your coworkers, and the plants and animals, the birds and the deer and the raccoons and the fish, and pretty much everybody and everything, because we are all tied up together here on this wonderful planet called Earth. And we have our usual excellent show for you today. We're going to chat for just a little bit, and you can join us at any time at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-107. Or you can text at 419-973-5841. Got our text receiving device right here, ready to go. And after we chat for another 10 minutes or so, then we're going to go to an interview that I just recorded last night, as a matter of fact, with our good friend Stephany Seay from Roam Free Nation. And she's going to be updating us on the current situation with the Yellowstone bison. And unfortunately, there's some discouraging news there, discouraging word being heard out there on the plains. After we talk to Stephany, we'll hear from our advertisers and patrons, our wonderful advertisers and patrons. And then we will go to Rebecca, who is has been furiously researching what exactly?
Spider mites.
Spider mites, yes. Okay. And those are cool. And then we got a whole bunch of news stories, some good, some bad. It's a mixed bag this week, folks, but all of it important. We try to sort of pluck out the most important stories, the ones that have the longest term implications for the environment and for the economy, and for you personally. So let's see. So for me personally, I had fun yesterday. I went to a seed cleaning at the Wood County Park District. And full disclosure, Wood County Park District is one of our sponsors, but I went to this seed cleaning not as a radio personality, but just as some guy who wanted to help them out, because what they do is they harvest the wild plants, the native wild plants from the parks, and then they spread those seeds around to keep the native plants healthy and populations healthy, and to keep back the invasive species. So I sat with a very nice bunch of people. We chatted and cleaned seeds, and it was fun. It was very nice. And so just a little bit of something that was fun there. But then, of course, there was also something not very fun this past week that I wanted to talk about, and that was there was a story in the Huffington Post which kind of, for me, it kind of summed up what has happened to the news. Because used to be you could get like useful information out of the news, but now the past couple of years the news has become more and more just like talking about personalities, and it's more gossip than news, and you sort of have to tease the news out of the gossip. And there was this story in Huffington Post this past week that was a perfect example of that. And it was that Marjorie Taylor Greene had introduced an amendment to a bill, and her amendment went down in flames. It was voted out. Only 13 of the most conservative Republicans voted with her. Actually, it was a bipartisan crash, and so that was the headline. So, oh, Marjorie Taylor Greene gets dissed by the Congress. And in this Huffington Post story, one of the things they included was a tweet by Laura Boebert, who's also a very super conservative. And then there was a whole really much publicized, supposed, alleged bathroom fight between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Laura Boebert. And it just made me think, what is this, high school? Are we in high school?
Jerry Springer Show.
We're talking about the popular girls having a fight in the bathroom. So this story was all about, Marjorie Taylor Greene lost out big on this amendment. But what Laura Boebert tweeted was that all three of my amendments passed. And so the actual news, the actual story there should have been, what were those amendments that passed, that Laura Boebert passed? And it turns out that what her amendments did was it opened up huge tracts of national park land and national forest lands to more mining and oil extraction. And so what should have, if they were telling us the important information, that would have been the headline. But instead, they're just filling time with these personality stories. And it also turns out that even though Laura Boebert's amendment, and what her amendment would have done is it would have limited Biden's ability to use the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to lower gas prices, like he did back in 2022. And what happened is that even though her amendment failed, then 2 days later the House actually passed that as a law. So now that law is probably going to be defeated in the Senate. It's probably never going to get voted on, or it's never going to be on Joe Biden's desk. But I don't care. I don't care what kind of fight, who's having a fight in the bathroom, who's wearing what, who's, I don't care about any of this personality stuff, who likes who, what I care about is what is the Congress actually doing, and all this other stuff is to distract us from that. All this other stuff is to make you feel like you know what's going on, but in reality, while you're looking at that's the flourish, that's the waving hand of the magician who's got the handkerchief and going like this while the other hand is doing, actually doing the trick. And there's way too much of that trick stuff going on. And if our media is helping in that, if our media is actually the vehicle for the waving handkerchief, the flourish, we're in trouble, because now you've got to, I actually had someone else do this for me, had to research at the Library of Congress to find out what Lauren Boebert's amendments were, the three amendments that did get passed. And so, crazy times, folks, and it's really becoming harder and harder to get the right kind of information. But we are here to give it to you. That's one reason I started For a Green Future in the first place is because we do give you that information, the stuff they leave out of the important stories. And so we really appreciate you listening. And more people are listening. We actually, this past week, we hit number 32 in the news subcategory from our podcast provider, Podomatic. And so that's 32 out of tens of thousands of podcasts on Podomatic. So Podomatic is one of the smaller podcast companies, but it's still 32 out of tens of thousands. Thank you so much for our podcast listeners and the people who are downloading our podcast. We really appreciate it. And we really appreciate the fact that you care enough about the information to take that extra step. So we may have a caller, and so I'm going to possibly go to them in just a second. But one thing that our next guest,
877-909-1007, the number you just
our
called.
next guest is Stephany Seay, and she's going to update us on what's happening out there in Yellowstone, where her organization, Robe Free Nation, is trying to protect the last herd of wild bison
that's the one you called.
in the United States, the last genetically pure herd of wild bison. So,
maybe it's
I
just
think
your phone or something.
we're going to
I don't
have
know.
to go to that right now. Josh, if you could
Okay.
hit the buttons while you're on the phone, I'd appreciate that. And here we go. Here's our interview with Stephany Seay. Stephany, welcome back to For a Green Future.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, happy to have you again.
I said it's good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. So you have managed to get back in the field.
Finally.
Yeah, actually being out there with the bison.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Great. It feels wonderful. It feels like I have a purpose. It's like that's where I need to be. And that's where I do my best work. And to be able to actually be with the buffalo, to see what they're dealing with, to see what's going on with these hunts and with the capture for slaughter and all of that. I mean, it's just so important to actually be there in the field. And I just feel like I'm so much stronger at being able to represent what is happening when we're actually there. And so this was just the first of many trips until we can get a more permanent position there. So I'll be returning soon. We have one of our board members who's going to be returning here really soon. And so we're going to have a constant presence out there, and we'll be able to tell people exactly what's going on.
Oh, that's great. And there is a lot going on.
There is a lot going on.
Yeah. Now, the last time we talked, it was before the hunt started, and things were looking pretty good, actually. The bison numbers were up over 6,000 for the first time in over 100 years.
Not anymore.
Yeah. And so I was going to ask, what has happened since then?
Since then, we've had some significant weather events that have driven buffalo down to lower elevation habitat, because that's what they do. That's what they have to do to survive. But there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of buffalo within the Gardner Basin, hundreds of them outside of the park boundaries. And it's not that they're totally safe in the park, because, of course, the Park Service has started capturing for slaughter and domestication, i.e. quarantine. But the hunt is out of control. The hunt, it's a frenzy out there. There's been at least over 500 buffalo killed so far, and it's not even February yet.
Wow. Yeah, that's terrible.
It is.
Yeah, it's funny that you use that word frenzy, because I've read historical accounts of when people were hunting the bison in large numbers, and when they had, like, for example, the trains that were sole purpose was to go out on the plains and shoot buffalo. And
Right.
it seems like there can be kind of almost a sort of a madness of when people start killing these magnificent animals.
Definitely. I mean, it's kind of like that term buck fever. What's going on now is like buffalo fever, and it's nuts, man. I mean, people are just shooting they don't even care who they're shooting. And a friend of mine described it really well. And actually I stayed with her, and she has a house right across Old Yellowstone Trail from Beatty Gulch. So
Okay.
she lives literally on the front lines every day, hearing all these hundreds and hundreds of gunshots, seeing buffalo coming out of the park, seeing them get gunned down, people around the neighborhood being afraid to go out of their house. And, like, because the bullets are just flying. And she described it as a shooting gallery, like an arcade shooting gallery. Like nobody really, they're not thinking about who they're even killing. They're just shooting at any buffalo they can get. And it's like a lot of them are the matriarchs, the mothers that are pregnant and they have all this wisdom. They're the ones that teach the buffalo, how the best time to migrate to which location, the best place to find food during what season. They're the ones that teach all the youth how to be a buffalo, a wild buffalo, and they're getting gunned down like crazy. I walked when it was quiet. There was a lull in the hunting, and so I took the opportunity to take my camera and walk Beatty Gulch just to document all the gut piles. And there were so many calves in all those gut piles, and
Unborn calves. Yeah, that were still.
And it's like these hunters, it doesn't make any sense. It's just doesn't make any sense because so many of them and people who represent them are, we want more buffalo on a larger landscape. We need more habitat. It's like, yeah, but you guys are the ones just being that wall of bullets that aren't allowing them to get anywhere. I mean, you're part of the problem big time. And we can put all the blame on Yellowstone and their trap. We can put all the blame on Montana and their intolerance, but it is an individual's responsibility, an individual's choice. No one's being forced, as they like to say. No one's holding a gun to your head and say, go kill these buffalo like this, right? This is a choice. And it is a huge part of the problem. And there is never going to be wild buffalo restoration or expansion of them on the landscape so long as this kind of thing is taking place.
But it's really, like you say, a wall of bullets. I mean, there's a road they have to cross, and if that's where the hunters are waiting, basically.
Well, there's a road that goes through the park and then out into national forest and private land. It's kind of a patchwork of private land and national forest land. Yeah, there's a road that they walk down because it's easy travel, I mean, right. The snow doesn't get quite as deep in Gardner as it does in West Yellowstone. So they can still move pretty easily around on the landscape off the road. But there's a road that just, and you'll see, and we saw, and you see it a lot, just hundreds of buffalo coming towards their doom. And it's like in a perfect world, in a healthy world, that would be a beautiful sight. And it is a beautiful sight, but it's so bittersweet because it's coming. Because there's all these pickup trucks lined up. There's all this law enforcement out there monitoring things. And there's like, tons and tons of hunters getting out of their trucks with their rifles, just walking. I mean, and it's so easy for them because it is true. And while these are wild buffalo, they are used to millions of park visitors every summer,
Yeah,
and
they've been
a little bit habituated.
Yeah.
And they're used to, people take pictures. And when people aim things at them, it usually doesn't hurt. But when they come into Montana this time of year, it hurts bad. Mm-hmm. And the Park Service is even, I mean, it's so crazy. At least 6 within the last week, the Park Service has had to euthanize because they get shot and not well. And they run into the park injured. And some of them are so badly injured that the Park Service has to take action,
So they're considering redoing the whole bison management plan, and they're sort of in the process of that. Where are we in that process?
Okay, so there's 2 things going on in that regard. The interagency bison management plan expired in 2015.
Right.
They are still working under that same plan. They have put out some alternatives. Nobody can agree. None of the agencies, tribes can agree on something to move forward with. So they're stuck. They're stuck in this outdated, expired plan, which isn't working for anyone on any level. The purpose of the plan is failing. And on another level, the Park Service, Yellowstone National Park, is developing an EIS to consider no more capture for slaughter, which is a really big deal.
Mhm.
So that within, it could be soon that we hear something that is available for public comment, that we can all put our voices out there to say, hey, yeah, please stop killing these buffalo, stop slaughtering them, and get rid of this trap. But I don't think they'll get rid of the trap because they're going to continue to capture buffalo for quarantine. I think that is something that's really heavily ingrained now. As much as we want to fight it, it's going to be really hard to stop that. But the bright side is if we can stop capture for slaughter, that will be a huge, huge thing. Because it's just a terrible, torturous, awful way for buffalo to go. And they don't deserve that. And there's no purpose. There's no reason for that.
Now, the method of shooting the bison, the buffalo, they're using lead shot. Could you talk a little bit about the impact of that?
Yeah, most of the hunters, I mean, lead bullets are cheap. You can use copper bullets, which are clean, quote unquote.
Right.
But it's hard to, they're cheap bullets. And bullets aren't cheap anyway. They're not cheap. But the lead is harming and killing the scavengers who come to feast at these gut piles. The ravens, the bald eagles, the golden eagles, the coyotes, the grizzly bears in the springtime. I mean, these guys are getting harmed from lead and they die. They die. And there's been more and more reports in and around Yellowstone of the increase of scavengers dying from lead poisoning. Now, I will have to hand it to them because this was really great. When we were at the IBMP meeting, the Nez Perce tribe gave a presentation about lead bullets and lead poisoning, urging people to switch to copper bullets. So there is an effort to try to, get that going in the mindset of these hunters. But like I said, lead's cheap and it's out there and it is.
Yeah, and as long as it's voluntary,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not going to be
Right.
terribly effective.
And I wonder what maybe reaching out even to the manufacturers of these bullets and they maybe even trying to get a ban on lead bullets. Like we got a ban on lead pencils,
Well, I mean, it's a pretty large caliber bullet, right? I mean, they're not out there with 22s or something.
They're supposed to be, and not everybody does it, but they're supposed to be using 50 caliber at least.
Right.
The buffalo do not die easy.
No.
And there's, I mean, you have to be a really good shot, and you should be a really good shot if you're going to be out there hunting. You know what I mean? You should be. If you're not a good shot, then you need to practice more until you go out there. Because so many buffalo suffer. They just suffer. They get shot and they don't die. And the hunters kind of don't even care. They move on to something else, another buffalo or some other thing. Like, I don't know if you saw in one of our reports about that bull. He got shot over 10 times. And the hunter eventually walked away and he still wasn't dead. And he left him to just bleed to death.
Yeah, that's terrible.
It is terrible. It's so disrespectful.
Do you think that maybe regulating lead shot could be part of the revised plan that they might come out with, that we might be able to put that in the comments somehow, that no lead shot in Yellowstone?
Possibly. I'm not sure how that would work because I don't know I'm not sure how that would work, but that's something to consider. That's something that should be considered for sure.
Okay.
Maybe it's a way to change that.
Right. So how is your organization, how is Buffalo Lovers doing? You've created
Buffalo Lovers is great. What Roam Free Nation is doing great. We definitely would like to get a little bit more attention. Facebook and the algorithms and all that is kind of like chugging along. So, we're trying to figure our way through that to get a little more notoriety. But but yeah, it feels really good. I mean, especially now that we're getting back in the field. Yeah, we've got a lot of support. There's a lot of support and a lot of people believe in who we are and what we do. And it feels really good. And so we just want to keep building that momentum and building that support base. And yeah, I would, if, people are interested and really care about wild buffalo, please visit us at roamfreenation.org.
Mm-hmm. And so how is the weather out there? How is this winter? You mentioned is it a harsh one? Is it a hard one for the bison? Or
it is harsher than it has been for the past few years. The past few years in and around Yellowstone, the winter came late and the snow didn't get as deep as it used to. But this year's been different. This year has had some significant early snowfall, which is why there's been such an early migration. And that used to be normal. That early migration used to be normal. And then it stopped for so many years that became normal. And now here we are, it's January and there's over 600 buffalo in Montana outside of Yellowstone, and even more in the park, just in the Gardner Basin. So winter is definitely making everybody feel the need to move around. And that's exactly what the buffalo are doing. And that's what they have to do. And yeah, and it's early still, it's only not even February yet.
Yeah. When does the official hunt end?
Well, that's the thing. So there's 7 different tribes who hunt under treaty right. And then there's the state of Montana's state hunt. The state of Montana's hunt runs from November 15th to February 15th. The tribes, as sovereign nations, each set their own seasons and quotas and have their own regulations. And all told, when you look at it, those hunts are year round. Most of the hunting will end towards the end of March. But then there are some tribes who will continue to hunt throughout the year. So yeah, I mean, it's really year round. They're not safe.
Right. All right. Well, we're just about out of time here. Anything?
Oh, wow. That was fast.
Yeah, I know. Anything you want to add before
No, I would just say, please come visit us, come learn about what we do, who we are, how you can help. At roamfreenation.org. We're on Facebook. We also have a group called Buffalo Lovers, which is on Facebook, and that's a really fun place to be. But yeah, check us out.
All right. That was our interview with Stephany Seay. And like she said, the time always seems to race by when we're interviewing her, because she's just so passionate about protecting that last herd of wild bison, which is so important for all of us, because we need to maintain that genetically pure strain of wild bison here in the North America. All right, well, that was our interview with Stephany, and now on to something a little more upbeat, I guess, since they're having such a hard time there at Yellowstone, and that is our advertisers and patrons, who are always happy to hear from. For Green Futures, brought to you by the Ecofill Shop. The Ecofill Shop is located at 115 West Mary in Bowling Green, Ohio. They sell lots of different things: cosmetics, bath and body, home and garden, cleaning, towels, knickknacks, candles, fragrances, and more. They sell all these things without plastic containers. The whole purpose of the Ecofill Shop is to eliminate plastic. Customers love them. In fact, we have a testimonial this week from Beth. And Beth says, "From cleaning to cleaning products, Jossie and friends will make it easier to keep your house in order. The dish soap is effective and smells great. The carbon fiber cloth helped remove permanent marker from a coffee table. I highly recommend for all your natural cleaning needs." And that was Beth. That's just one of the many glowing testimonials you'll see at their website, ecofillshop.com. And I am an ecofillshop.com customer. Just yesterday, I shaved using my shaving soap bar I bought from them, and my little brush, and it gives a great shave. I didn't actually have time to shave this morning, but still looks good because it was such a good shave last night. So if you are interested, give them a call at 419-944-8862. Talk to the owner, Jossie, who's very passionate about the environment. Or you could check out their website, as I said, ecofillshop.com. or better yet, just drop in and visit them at 115 West Mary in Bowling Green. That's the Ecofill shop. And For a Green Future is brought to you also by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats and they lead outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy, from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. And there's a bunch of ways to find out what they're doing, things like the seed cleaning workshop yesterday. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. You can also go to their website, wcparks.org, and you can find them on all the other social media, Facebook, Instagram, etc., etc. That is the Wood County Park District. So now that we've heard from our sponsors, now we get to hear from Rebecca. Rebecca, what have you got for us this week?
I have got spider mites. Shut up.
Well, that you.
Shut up, Joe.
All right, sorry.
I know you've heard that around town. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you to reserve comment towards the end because I think you're going to have a comment, and if you don't, I do.
Okay.
But
All right.
right. So this week it was inspired by a viewer who a long time ago actually, but I kept getting distracted with other things, sent me a video about a middle schooler in California named Rory who did a study that showed that you can, to some extent, repair the damage that pesticides do to the memories of honeybees by giving them polyphenols from tea.
Okay.
So she did tests, with peppermint, see if they recognize, after exposure, they recognize the scent of peppermint associated with food still, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was kind of an amazing little piece of science. But it, left me a lot of terms that it turned out, had to learn because this segment, my short segment should be called Rebecca Has Forgotten Her Grade School Science, basically. So that's what it's all about here. Spider mites, it turns out, are one of the major kinds of mites that people use pesticides and on crops for. And they are in the arachnid class with ticks. Who knew? Spider mites and ticks actually just tiny spiders, because, like me, you've probably been burned a number of times and have found out that things have a colloquial name that has nothing, common name which has nothing to do with what they are. Like spider monkeys. They have spoiler alert, they're not related to spiders at all.
Oh, okay.
But spider mites, yes, actually. So yeah, first of all, I found out that pesticides, now I had always assumed somehow that a pesticide was an insecticide. I feel dumb about this now because I should have known better. A pesticide is any substance which kills anything you think is a pest, basically. So pesticides would include, obviously, insecticides and herbicides, but also things that kill microbes, fungi, fish, birds, mollusks, insects, and also kind of just anything you want to kill that you don't like, including there's something called a lampricide, which just kills lamprey eels, and there are stuff that just kills mollusks, because probably zebra mussels. So I didn't know that, and one of them is a miticide, which is something that kills mites. I'm a little confused because the way that it looked when I looked it up, they were also including information about insecticides. I'm not really sure, like, okay, if you're a farmer and you put a miticide on your field, do you also need an insecticide? Like, do miticides also kill? What are they implying here? I'd like to know the answer to this, actually, whether it's separate, whether people are just, like, using the terms interchangeably and using the substances interchangeably. I do not know. Spider mites are in the Tetranicidae family, apparently, which has 1,200 species, and the subclass Acari. And generally speaking, they're real tiny little thingy doodles. They tend to hang out on the undersides of leaves, and often a lot of species spin protective webs. That's how you can tell you've got a problem because they puncture the leaves apparently to in order to eat, or the plant cells are to eat. So your leaves might be looking a little peaked and they got little webs on the underside is how you can tell you've got them. They like a bewildering variety of crops and other plants, non-crop plants, including notably soybeans and corn are the things that they use miticides to protect a lot from mites. But also they seem to particularly like nightshade crops, your potatoes, your tomatoes, that kind of thing, and also peppers, vine crops like pumpkins and different kinds of pumpkins, gourds, that kind of thing. So yeah, but they really like a lot of different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So right, some of the chemicals that miticides commonly contain would be, I think, abamectin, etoxazole, spiromesifin, or hexythiazox. I don't. Some of those sound like minor Aztec deities to me, but I guess they're not. Anyway, although they would give you good crops too, you just had to do something a little. Well, actually, yeah, you have to sacrifice some humans either way to get the good crops. Is the idea, whether it's the Aztec gods or because the pesticides do bad things to humans, so it's still kind of apparently, mites have a rapid life cycle, which makes them pesticide resistant, especially in dry heat. So, especially you get a situation like the drought in California, the mites are going to really go crazy. So it's kind of an arms race that way already. And people use them in hive, apparently, to protect bees, mostly from a different kind of mite called an ectoparasitic bee mite, or Varroa destructor.
Wow.
Which again just sounds like
That's
a Harry Potter kind
really
of thing or something.
Big name for a tiny little critter.
It sounds very, very frightening. And those work by destroying drone sperm viability. So they save your bees, but kind of at what cost? And apparently this is studied using iodine stains to study the sperm viability of the drones. They figured out it's most damaging when they're exposed when they're in their larval stage. But also, what polyphenols are essentially is phytochemicals derived from plant sources. They're a type of antioxidant, basically. They keep you from rusting because oxygen is life-sustaining but also kills you. So, what can you do? But yeah, I would like to leave you with the thought that there is a guy somewhere who spent a couple of years studying bee sperm. I didn't get too much into the details, but
like how you study bee sperm.
Yeah, I'm not sure I
sound
completely want to know, but yeah, that's a job.
Unnatural,
that's a job.
Yeah. That you reminded me of an old joke from Environmental magazine that I remember back in the 70s, where somebody was interviewing somebody, and the interviewer says, "Well, I understand that your country has had so many environmental problems that your entire population is sterile now." And the second person says, "Yes, but we expect to have the problem licked within 2 generations."
Okay, of course. Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Only 2 generations after we've all been dead. Yeah.
Right. Then we'll figure it out. All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca, for.
You're welcome.
And I just want to say, you asked for a comment, and I've always kind of liked spider mites because they're just these tiny little red, fuzzy-looking things, just almost microscopic.
They're kind of cute, aren't they? I don't know. It occurred to me that this, in some ways, this is kind of the exact opposite of what we encourage in this show, because we actually, this whole arms race thing where let's dump a lot of poisons and then fix the effects of the poisons by more chemicals, which will have unpredictable effects, and then we'll have to fix that. It's not
Right.
what we really want to have to happen on this show. On the other hand, this is a kid who was thinking, well, I'm not so good at affecting the minds of legislators to do the right thing, but I can do science,
Yeah, trying to end run. All right, well, thanks, Rebecca. And now, on to our Ecological News segment. And we've got a fair number of stories to get through today. Unfortunately, we have to lead probably with the saddest, most depressing. And so if you stick with us through this one,
No,
we'll
that's
get
good because it's all up after that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
We got some better ones after this. But a few weeks back, we reported on the whole controversy in Atlanta over what they call Cop City, which is the plan to cut down. There's a forest in Atlanta, and they plan to cut down about half of it to build this this playground for police where they go and pretend to like fight off terrorist attacks and stuff, and also a movie studio. So unfortunately, this has escalated. It's been going for quite a while now, but this past week.
Nobody does any more movies in Georgia for a while.
Yeah, this past week, a protester who was living in the forest in order to prevent it being cut down was in fact killed by the police. Manuel Esteban Paez Terran, and his handle, he called himself Tortuguita, which means little turtle.
That's cute.
Yeah, and there was a story on it in The Guardian on the 21st of January entitled "Assassinated in Cold Blood," in quotes. Activists killed protesting Georgia's, quote, Cop City, unquote. That was on January 18th. The police claim that he shot first, and there is a policeman in the hospital with a gunshot wound to the abdomen. And so the protesters say probably not, but they weren't there. There's no eyewitnesses except the police. And this forest...
But that is what the police would say after they've shot someone, so...
Yeah, this forest apparently is... actually, I didn't realize this until this past week researching this story, but this forest is really, really culturally important to Atlanta. Like, people love these woods so much that they actually, in 2017, they amended the city's constitution to say that those woods should remain uncut forever.
Yeah, that's what they don't talk about. Nobody in Atlanta wanted this stuff.
Right, and then 2 years later, the city council just voted, oh, well, except we will cut down half of it for this Cop City, which is, and the mayor, who was mayor at the time, got voted out of office.
Because to heck with the will of the people.
Right, so it's a terrible situation. And he was shot on a Thursday, or on a Wednesday, and then on Friday they had a big protest, and then hundreds of people went downtown, and you know, this is why I am so rabidly anti-violence or non-violence. The protesters at that protest smashed some windows. They smashed the windows of there's a nonprofit lobbying firm that has been pushing this Cop City, and they smashed the windows of that company, and they set fire to some patrol cars, and the police came and tackled people and arrested them and charged another bunch of protesters with terrorism, which we reported a couple weeks ago. They arrested a bunch of people who were in the woods and charged them with terrorism. And those people, the first group that didn't actually link the arrests to any activity, they were just kind of like, oh, you're protesters, and some of the protesters did stuff, so now you're a terrorist too. And the governor called out the National Guard. They called out 1,000 National Guard troops and sent them to cities all over Atlanta. It's just...
Cities?
Yeah.
All over Atlanta?
Or cities all over Georgia.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant.
Yeah, it is what I meant. Yeah, and so nice story on it in the Rolling Stones, among other places, but basically...
So there's just a chance you might have meant neighborhoods all over Atlanta.
Right. Yeah, well, but they did, yeah, send all over Atlanta, or all over Georgia. And then Rolling Stone's story was titled, "Georgia is trying to kill protests with terrorism charges. Activists are undeterred." So that's another story I used for this. But very sad news from Georgia. And now the U.S. has to join that list. Every year we talk about the list of environmental activists that have been killed around the world, and there's hundreds and hundreds every year. And this year, the U.S. has to be added to that because...
Yep.
Yeah. But, again, once the spiral of violence gets started, it just gets uglier and uglier, and it's gotten ugly in Atlanta.
See, I feel like that's giving responsibility for the authorities' behavior to the protesters, though, and I feel like the authorities are responsible for the authorities' behavior.
Yeah, I mean, the police are responsible for shooting this guy and killing him. The question is, you know, did he... But then we start getting into the, oh yeah, but he shot a cop first, and then it's like, did he? And now nobody's talking about the fact that this forest is still, you know, they're still looking at destroying the forest.
Yeah, well, maybe we need to talk about that then.
Yeah, so we will keep talking about it, and we'll keep looking at what's going on in Atlanta, but it's just...
They keep emphasizing on the news the fact that, well, we did a study and 9 out of 10, and we only found one person who was from Atlanta. Well, you know, I can't protest everything that goes on in my city. You know, just I might want to in some cases, you know. People got jobs, people got lives, you know, and so it's America, you know. It's all one country. That's supposed to be important.
Well, and especially since the governor is using terrorism charges to discourage protest. I mean, the
Constitution, we kind of fought a war over whether it's my business what happens in other states, you know?
Well, yeah, there's that, and protest itself is supposed to be protected, but now protest has become criminalized.
Yeah.
And it's just a terrible thing. And basically, they should just back down. Basically, Georgia, the city of Atlanta, and the state of Georgia should just say, you know what, we're going to respect our Constitution, which has a,
and America's Constitution too.
We're not going to cut down this forest and not cut down that forest. So that's what should happen down there, and then people will stop shooting each other over that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now back onto. So now we have to get a little more upbeat here, and some good news out of Germany, and that is that in 2022. Renewables provided 49.6%. In other words, 50%. In other words, half of Germany's electricity came from renewable power in 2022. And that was despite the whole thing with Germany, which has forced them to start to reopen some coal-burning plants because their natural gas supply was cut off. Despite that, renewables increased. They went up from 45.6% in 2021 to 49.6%. So that's a 5% increase in 1 year, which is 244 terawatts more, terawatt hours more during the year. Essentially, they put up like 6 more gigawatts worth of solar power, and they put up even more additional wind power. They put up about twice as much, they generated 124 terawatt hours of electricity using wind. And they also have some biomass in there, which is not that environmentally friendly. It's actually kind of bad. And the percentage of renewables went up even though hydro fell because they had a drought. And so that fell from 19 terawatt hours to only to 16 terawatt hours. But even with that, they still went up to 49.6%. And just one interesting thing, and most of the rest, the other half, pretty much came from coal, which is not good. The Germans dropped their demand by 0.8%, by just about 1%, using conservation, and their production went up 1.7%, which is how they were able to export this power to France to keep the lights on in France, even though their nuke plants have failed. So Germany's doing it, and it's important to remember that all these percentages, 49.6 renewables, these are percentages that the pro-nuclear and pro-fossil fuel people were saying for decades would be impossible, that grids would become unstable, there'd be rolling blackouts, and they're just wrong. Germany still has the most dependable grid in Europe, and now one of the highest percentages of renewable energies. And just speaking of that thing that they would say about renewables causing instability, there was a story in DW, it's on YouTube, and DW is I believe it stands for Deutsche World. Basically, it's the
Deutsche Welt.
Yeah, it's the German news agency, and they did a story, it's on YouTube, it's called The Smear Tactics Against Wind and Solar, and because whenever there's some post talking about how great renewables are and how they're a path to zero carbon, you will immediately in the comments section see hundreds of anti-renewable trolls on there spouting all kinds of stuff. And what DW did is they followed them back to find out who these people were and where they were getting this information. And they were able to trace it back to these right-wing think tanks, but they're all nonprofits with secret donors. And so they weren't able to figure out all of it, but they did figure out that some of them at least are being funded by oil companies. So, and fossil fuel companies. So when you see that wave of trolls saying, you know, spouting all kinds of stuff like wind kills birds and all these falsehoods, just remember there is money in back of it. And I also wanted to take this time to point out that there is no green money behind this show. I can tell you with full authority that we are
barely any money at all behind this show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, excess money from secret sources is not one of the problems we have here for a green future.
We'd kind of like that problem.
I mean, we'd like more patrons and more advertisers, but the ones we talk about they're the only ones we've got. So there's no secret billionaire back of us. Although sometimes I wish there was, because it would make things a lot easier.
Many ways, yes.
All right, anyway, on to our next story. We have reported in the past that Holtec, the company, is trying to reanimate the dead Palisades nuclear power plant up there in Michigan. They got refused in November. The NRC said, this is crazy, you can't restart this. But turns out Holtec has reapplied. And so, like a real zombie, you know, this idea that they could restart a closed plant just keeps coming back. Beyond Nuclear is calling it just a pure bailout, and they're asking for billions of dollars again, this time from the federal government. Over 100 environmental groups opposed this idea of restarting a closed plant, a worn out, dangerous plant. But they're trying again. They're not giving up. So they have to be beaten back again. Just an interesting little note from Norway. Next story. Their heat pump sales have gone up 25%. That means they put up about 150,000 houses in Norway switched from gas heating over to geothermal heating or air-to-air heating, heat pump heating, which proves to you, you know, if they could heat their homes in Norway using geothermal.
Norway not being known as a balmy tropical paradise.
Yeah, we could certainly.
Not yet, anyway.
Right, we could certainly do it here in Ohio. And they had a record year in 2021, and then they increased that record by another 25% in 2022. The International Energy Agency says that there's about 200 million geothermal or air-to-air heat pump systems in the world, are heating about 10%, providing about 10% of the world's heating and cooling. And that needs to increase dramatically if we're going to make the whole zero carbon thing. And just geothermal heating is just better in every way, you know. If you've got to replace your furnace, don't even think about a gas furnace this year. Go find out about heat pumps. Okay, another good news. Wales has made it an official policy. They're going to target 100% renewables by 2035. They already get 55% of their energy from renewables, over half. And they are doing it with a coordinated plan of encouraging heat pump installations. And their main source is to increase the offshore wind. Right now, offshore wind is about 20% of their energy. There's one big offshore wind plant in Wales. It's called the Awel y Môr wind farm. And they want to expand that by quite a bit in order to get 100%. So yet another country has decided on sanity and picked the sane energy path.
And Wales has their reasons, having been the victim of several legendary mining disasters, including one where slag heat fell on it exterminated all the children in the village, essentially.
Right, yeah. Luckily, solar panels don't do that. They don't bury schools.
It's a good thing about them.
In fact, you could have a school covered in solar panels and it doesn't hurt anybody.
Totally.
All right, last story. This one comes to us from the MIT Technology Review on January 24th. And it says, a startup, here's the actual title. A startup says it's begun releasing particles into the atmosphere in an effort to tweak the climate. In other words, some private company has decided, we're going to do geoengineering. We don't care. We're not going to ask for any permission or get any permits. We're just going to start doing it. And it looks like it's a scam because they're selling what they're calling cooling credits. But,
of course.
But essentially what they did is they took weather balloons, filled them with sulfur dioxide particles, and put them up into the stratosphere. So they're already messing with it, folks. And, we got to stop putting carbon in and forget about these mad scientist schemes, which are going to do who knows what to all of us. Well, that's it. Thanks so much for listening to the show. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
We are signing off.
I don't want no oil, a spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!